Hello dear friends, my name is Clive Thompson and I'm here to talk about gold today, and I'll also be telling you a story from my career, a very embarrassing story when I found myself in a potential client's hotel bedroom. Not something you want to do again. I want to go again anyway, and it ended in disaster, so I'll tell you all about that shortly. But let's start with gold. What's going on with gold? We've seen, I was away in China for several weeks, and gold rallied from something like $3,700 to $4,380, I think was the peak. And then on a sixpence, it turned around and crashed 5 or 6% in a day and has carried on down a little bit since, although we're having a bit of a rebound today. So we had 2 weeks, literally we had the last 2 weeks were down with kind of last few days up. So today is Friday, 31st of October, 2025. And if you don't know what day that is, it's Halloween. So be prepared for the children knocking at your door saying trick or treat. Now, I remember a few years ago when Halloween was relatively new here in Switzerland, there was an article in the local paper that the police had been called because some children had been throwing eggs at a house. I imagine it was the house of somebody who didn't open the door or something like that. I don't know what it was, but they described it as some little monsters had been seen throwing eggs at the house. And the police were called and they found the kids concerned and confiscated the eggs. And as the story ran, that they were inviting the owners of the eggs, i.e. the mothers, to come and collect them from the local police station. There was a follow-up story to say that nobody had come to collect the eggs and they had to throw them away. But that's the story. But let's go to gold now. I'm just going to bring up the chart of gold so you can have a look at how that's doing. So this is a weekly chart, and you see these two red lines here. I'll just make them a bit bigger here, coming down, these two bar charts. That's 2 weeks of fall. So we had a peak up here at $4,380, and then it plunged in the pace of 2 weeks down to, where are we, about there, where is it, about $3,888, so we'll call it 3,880. So that's a plunge of $500, more than 10% of the gold price from its peak. It's recovering now. You can see there's a wick going down here, but to see that, that's a weekly chart. If I put it back to a year-to-date chart, you can see the green line. That's the recovery here in the last few days. Now this is let's just change the timing of that chart. That's a one-day chart. So yesterday we had the green line up. It's up a little bit today, even though it's a red line. It's just slightly below yesterday's close, and it's currently at $4,019. So a little bit up from the low point. So good, call it $130 higher than the low point, which is 3,880. So should you sell? Should you buy? Is gold going to go sideways? Well, let's answer that question. Obviously, I don't know the answer, and what I'm telling you is not investment advice. But what I can tell you, I've seen in my career countless bull markets, and every bull market I've ever seen has been punctuated by moments like this. You have weeks and weeks of things going up, and then suddenly there's a crash. I say a crash, it wasn't really a crash. I mean, you can hardly call 6 to 10% a crash, but there's a sudden sharp dip, and everyone says, bull market's finished, it's all over. And you get some people selling on the way down. They're thinking it's going to go a lot lower. They're hoping to buy back at a lower price. And then one day you wake up and suddenly, whoosh, it's gone up again. And they say, yes, if it gets back to that low price, I'll buy. But it never does. So was this figure of 3,880 the low price? Obviously, I don't know that. And to be honest with you, I don't really think so. I could be wrong. But for gold to pull back, to do it properly, it probably has to pull back somewhere between 3,500 and where we are now. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a lower gold price. But should you sell? The answer is absolutely not. Because if you sell now, I guarantee that when the bottom is finally reached, and it'll be close to where we are now, maybe 3,500, 3,600, 3,700, when the bottom's reached, you will feel much more bearish at the bottom than you feel today. By definition, every market bottom comes at a time when people are at their maximum bearishness. Has to be the case, otherwise it wouldn't be a bottom. So if you sell now and it dips sharply, which I think is a possibility, you'll feel more bearish at the bottom and therefore you won't have the ability to buy back. You might think, oh, well, if it goes to the bottom and bounces back, I'll buy back. But when things hit a bottom, usually the bounce is fast and furious, very fast and furious. And most people I know who've done this, they've lost the urge to buy back when they could have bought 10% cheaper the day before or the week before. So if you're in it for the long term, I mean, treat it differently if you're a trader, but I'm not speaking to the traders here. If you're in it for the long term, you can hold the gold you've got, sit through it. It's your parachute. It's your umbrella. It's going to save you if everything goes wrong with the fiat system, which is a real possibility now. If we look at some of the things which are going on in the world, look at government debt. It's literally out of control. It's going up and up and up without stopping. What's this? Federal government current expenditures, interest payments on the debt. So the interest payments on the debt are spiraling out of control. It's not the end of the world yet, but the direction of travel isn't getting any better and nothing's being done about it. So, it will at some point, we'll have a crisis, just as we had a crisis in the UK in 2022. Some people may remember the Liz Truss Kwarteng scandal, if you like, when they brought in a mini budget and the market didn't like it and gilt-edged securities plunged all in one day, and they had to be saved by the Bank of England, which was guaranteed in that case by the British government that they wouldn't lose money. But you can, at any moment in time, the confidence can evaporate from the market. So you can't see that really, can you? Let me just move that, make that a bit smaller so you can see that full chart. There. Now you can see it. So you can see the government interest, that's the interest expenditure on government debt just going up and up and up. Let's just have a look at silver and see how that's doing. That also hit something like $54 and then came off very, very sharply. It went down to about $45, $50, something like that. It's now back up at $48.85. But the peak here, $54, nearly $54.50, nearly. So there is a shortage of silver in the world for industrial use. But with the rise in silver, the very, very rapid ascent in the price of silver that you see here, coming in the space of just a couple of months from $37 to $54, that sucked out a lot of silver. There's a lot of silver going through the recycling process at the moment, and that means that silver price kind of got ahead of itself, and it's coming back. So we'll probably be for a period of consolidation. I don't want to tell you it lasts for a week or a month or 3 months because we don't know. There's not a rule here. You can't say last time it did that and this time it'll do the same. It doesn't work like that. The market does what it wants to do. But what I can say is it's normal behavior for markets in a bull market to have periods of consolidation when a decline of 5 or 10 or 15% is possible in the middle of a bull market. And you can never know if it was the end of the bull market, but I don't think it was because, we got this government debt out of control. We've got central banks continuing to buy gold. Let's have a look here. So here we see, this is up to June. They don't have the September figures in yet. the quarter. So up to June, we saw Poland by 89 tons, Turkey by 27 tons, not 27, 77 tons, India by 72 tons, China by 44 tons, Czech Republic by 20 tons. There were a few sales. The biggest sale was by the Philippines there that you see on the chart, 28 tons. So each of the first four above bought a lot more gold than the Philippines sold. And there's been net flows in Q3 into the exchange traded funds, as you can see from that article there. So gold is seeing a revival of interest from portfolio managers because money's going into the gold physically backed ETFs. It's still very nascent. It's not a lot, but I think over time, as we get near the end of the year, gold still is one of the best performing assets in 2025. And I think as we get near to the end of the year, portfolio managers are going to have to tweak their portfolios a little bit, take advantage of the dip we're in, because we are in a dip. We're sort of nearly, not quite, but we're nearly 10% below the peak. And they can take advantage of that to put a bit of gold in the portfolio. So when the client says, did you have the best performing asset of 2025? They can at least say, yes, we have a little bit of it, even if they missed out on the bulk of the gain. Now, if gold were to pull back, if they buy it now and the gold were to pull back, maybe some smart portfolio manager will pull out of gold before the end of the year, accelerating the decline. But I rather think that now we're in the last quarter of the year, it's time for them to be putting gold into the portfolio to show their clients, yes, we have a little bit of the fast-growing asset. And they want to be prepared for the next year, because all things being equal, it looks to me, and again, not investment advice, I'm not an investment advisor here, it looks to me like gold, in my opinion, personal opinion, will be quite strong. When you've got something with a lot of momentum behind it, that usually continues. We've seen that with the tech stocks, which, by the way, are doing very, very well in the last few weeks. They've just gone from strength to strength. And we've had Jerome Powell. The Federal Reserve did reduce the interest rates a day or two ago. But what was interesting, he said there's no certainty that interest rates will be reduced again in December. So markets didn't like that for a day, and then they went off to the races again and hitting all-time highs. Let's just have a quick look and just see how those stocks are doing. I'm going to bring it up on the screen in a second. I'll start with the Dow Jones. So there you are. The Dow Jones, it's kind of, let's make it a shorter term. Let's make it 3 months, even 1 month. So the Dow Jones, a little bit below the peak, but the peak was at 48 something, just over 48, and it's now currently 47,600. So it's less than 1% from the all-time high. S&P 500, it's about 1% from the all-time high, and the Nasdaq index climbing today looks like it could go through the all-time high again in the next few days. The FTSE, by the way, did manage to break the 10,000 mark a few days ago there. When was that? It was on 29th yesterday, day before yesterday, which was the highest ever. It said it broke the 10,000 mark. It doesn't seem to have done there. So anyway, 9,000. It was an all-time peak anyway. Now let's just talk about what I said I'd tell you a little story from my career, and this is a story about how I ended up in a potential client's bedroom. Now, the story began, and it must have been perhaps 35 years ago, something like that, 30 years ago maybe, long before we had iPhones and things like that, and I don't think we didn't have the internet yet either. If it existed, certainly nobody had it. I'm at my desk in Switzerland, and I get a call from my friend at a firm of large chartered accountants in the UK, one of the big five. It's my friend Ronnie, that's not his real name, and Ronnie says, hello Clive, I've got a big client for you. Do you think you could get on a plane sometime and come over and meet him? Sure, everyone's open for business, so in due course I got on a plane and went to London, and I went into the offices of the chartered accountants to meet Ronnie and the potential client. And here's a mock-up of how it was. You can see me sitting at the table and Ronnie at the top of the table and two other people. So on the right-hand side, I have a man, I'm going to call him Mr. Big. Now, Mr. Big was our potential client, and facing Mr. Big on the other side was, I'm going to call him Mr. Hotel, because Mr. Hotel owned a hotel near Paddington Station in London. And Ronnie, who you can see at the end of the table, was explaining to me the situation. He said, Mr. Big is the nephew of Mr. Hotel, and Mr. Big is going to be investing some money into Mr. Hotel's business. Now, Mr. Hotel lives in London, works in London, it's his hotel, he runs the hotel and some other businesses. Mr. Big, on the other hand, lives in Malaysia and had made a lot of money, I was told, from property transactions because he's what they call a Bhumi Putra. I had no idea what that was at the time, but it was explained to me that it means something like sons of the land, which basically means that a lot of farming families had owned land, which through the good luck and expansion of Kuala Lumpur suddenly became prime real estate where they could build hotels and shopping malls, and a lot of farmers were able to become very rich thanks to having land in the right place. So that was the story about Mr. Big, as I was told. We're going to find out much later that none of that was really true. Anyway, as Ronnie put it, Mr. Big had a large account at Credit Suisse in Geneva and was not happy with their services and would like to open an account with my bank. So I went through the usual spiel. I talked about how good Swiss banking is, how you can buy assets all around the world, how you can buy gold. I mean, obviously we did have a discussion about gold. We've been talking about gold 30, 40 years ago. Would have been a good thing to have bought it, by the way, at the prices you could have had it. Anyway, I talked about the capabilities of Switzerland without selling anything at that point. It's just sort of saying, yes, we're a big bank. You can come in, you can open an account. But you'll have to travel to Switzerland to open an account. I also asked him if he would be willing to provide us with bank references and also a copy of his portfolio with Credit Suisse, and also provide us with some evidence about the source of his funds, which came from property, and I was expecting to see some information about sales of land to hotel companies, for example, where his name would have been on the document. And Mr. Big said, Mr. Thompson, delighted to give you all of that, no problem, I'll supply everything. It's a bit much compared with what we have in Malaysia, but no problem, you'll get what you want, and we'll come to Geneva and open the account. Excellent news. So, within a week or two, Mr. Big turns up in Geneva with Ronnie, the chartered accountant, and with Mr. Hotel. All three of them arrive, and we sit down in one of the bank's conference rooms to discuss how we're going to invest the money, what we're going to do. And once again, I ask him, because I haven't received it, what about the bank references and what about the evidence, the source of funds? Can you provide me with something? He said, yes, Mr. Thompson, no problem. I'll get it to you all by the end of the day. And we'll come back tomorrow, we'll sign all the forms to open the account, and everything will be hunky-dory, and then I'll transfer the money across from Credit Suisse. I said, fine. And I tried to press a little bit on how much money was in Credit Suisse, but he was decidedly vague. He said, Mr. Thompson, I promise you'll be more than happy when you find out the amount. So that was kind of enticing, but you always want to know the amount, because somebody, one person might think 100,000 is a large amount, and then the guy with 20 million might think that 20 million is too small for us. So it would have been good to know, but I wasn't getting that information. So they left the bank, and I was working late in the office. It must have been 7:30 in the evening, I suppose, when a phone call comes in, and it's Mr. Big. And he sounded a little bit angry, and he said, Mr. Thompson, I was not happy with our meeting today. And I said, oh, really? What went wrong? Mr. Thompson, you asked too many questions. all this nonsense about references and source of funds and things like that. We never have that in Malaysia. Why are you asking me these questions? I said, well, really sorry, but we got to find out where the money comes. We and we don't want to be involved with criminal money. It's the rules. Well, Mr. Thompson, I'm not happy, but I want you to come to the hotel immediately, and I'll show you everything you need to see. Okay, I said, but which hotel are you in? Now, that should have been my first warning. He told me that he's in a hotel called Hotel Tiffany in Geneva. Now, Tiffany is a very respectable hotel. I'd be perfectly happy staying there with either for business or with my family. But perhaps if you're a multi-millionaire, you might expect to stay in a posher hotel. And there are some very expensive hotels where you can easily spend $800 a night if you want. Now, Tiffany would probably be $300, $200 a night, I don't know. Perfectly acceptable for a family vacation, but if you're a multi-millionaire, perhaps you'd be moving up. So it's kind of a little bit of a warning, but anyway, I agreed to go to the hotel, and when I got there, it was kind of getting a little bit dark, and I went into the reception where the Mr. Big was waiting for me with my friend Ronnie, and Mr. Big said, Mr. Thompson, we're going to do the business in my room. We've got a suite, and we'll do it up there. Now, normally I would be kind of nervous if someone was inviting me into their bedroom, but as my friend Ronnie was there, I thought, well, okay, not too much can go wrong. But of course, don't forget, Mr. Big, he is a giant. This guy, look at the picture of him. This is a mock-up, of course. He's like a sumo wrestler. He's tall, he's fat, he's large, he's broad-shouldered. He's twice the weight of, or maybe even 3 times my weight. A scary guy in a certain sense. But anyway, long and short of it, in Hotel Tiffany, we go up to his room. And when we get to his room, there's these bottles of wine on the mantelpiece. Right there, you see them sitting on the mantelpiece. That's another mock-up. And he says, Mr. Thompson, before we do business in Malaysia, we always drink. And I said, that's fine, but you've only got 5 bottles of wine. And I was kind of trying to make a joke there, because there were 4 of us. In fact, the fourth guy, the Mr. Hotel, was in the room already. So I said, oh, there's 5 bottles of wine. There's only 5 bottles of wine. There's 4 of us. He said, Mr. Thompson, don't you worry about that. When we run out, we'll order more. Oh, okay, thank you. So we start drinking the wine, and we manage to more or less polish it off after a while, and more bottles come up, and we polish those off. And I've got a few bottles of wine in me, and my eyes are getting a bit blurry, so I think it might be a good idea to ask Mr. Big for the evidence that he was going to show me. Now, and that's probably before I became blind with all the alcohol in me. So I said to him, by the way, you promised to show me the evidence of your funds and where it came from and everything. Ah, yes, Mr. Thompson. He said, no problem. And he takes his briefcase and flips it open. It's like click, click, open the briefcase and pulls out a single sheet of A4 paper. Now, when I first saw this, it was a bit blurry to me and I couldn't make it out. It probably looked something a bit like that, relatively unreadable. But as my eyes started to adjust, it looked like this. Now, I'm sure everybody who's looking at this can see what's wrong. At the top of the page, we have the words Credit Suisse spelt the English way, whereas Credit Suisse spell it the French way, which is Suisse, Suisse, not Swiss. So that told me immediately there was something fishy going on, because it didn't look genuine at first sight. But even more confusingly, it said, and this, I don't know how he typed this or where it came from, it said amount deposited, 1 billion ringgits, amount to be repaid, $1 billion. So that makes absolutely no sense at all. And there was probably a date on it and an interest rate. I think the interest rate was something which bore no resemblance to real interest rates either, maybe 13% a year or something. And down in the bottom right-hand corner of this imaginary certificate deposit that he'd produced was a great big red English seal, the type of seal you can buy in W.H. Smith, which you put on legal documents, but it's not the sort of thing we use in Switzerland at all. So I might have got a few bottles of wine in me, but I can actually tell that this is a complete forgery, and a very, very bad forgery at that. So I turned to Mr. Big and I said, "Where did you get this?" And he said, "My lawyer prepared everything." I said, "Okay." And I said, "Are you sure it's real?" And with that, Mr. Big exploded. He became extremely angry, yelling and shouting and screaming and saying, "How dare you? No, what do you think you're you calling me a liar? You charlatan, I'm not going to bank with you." And he's screaming and shouting and absolutely furious. And everybody in the room was completely terrified of him because he was knocking things around, knocked some bottles over, and he was absolutely mad. And I was scared out of my living daylights, and so I said, "Well, no problem, we'll see you tomorrow, we'll sort it out tomorrow. I just had a bit of wine and probably can't see straight." And I beat a hasty retreat and left. Now, of course, after I'd left, I never really expected to see Mr. Big or hear from him again, because I knew this was all a complete hoax, which somehow I'd been suckered into. For what reason, I had no idea. But even though I thought it was all over, the next day I'm at my desk and I get a phone call, and I can hear that it's in the street from a payphone. We had payphones back then. We don't have payphones anymore, but it was from a payphone. And I could tell that because I could hear the tram, the Geneva trams going ding, 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 ding in the street, and passers by with conversations and things in French. And it was Mr. Big. And he said, "Mr. Thompson, I just want to let you know the money is going to be coming later today." And of course I didn't believe it. And I said, oh, that's very interesting. And where's it coming from, Mr. Big? "From Credit Suisse, of course." I said, "Have you been speaking with your banker?" "Of course, Mr. Thompson. They're going to send it immediately." I said, "Right. And what's the name of your banker?" And then there's a silence. I can still hear the street noises, the trams and people walking by. And I said, "Hello, are you there?" "Yes, Mr. Thompson." I said, "What is the name of your banker at Credit Suisse?" Again, another long pause of silence. And I repeated my question. "Mr. Big, what is the name of your banker at Credit Suisse?" "Yes, Mr. Thompson." I said, "Did you hear my question?" "Yes, Mr. Thompson." "Right, so I just ask you, because just to make sure when the money comes across we might have a question we have to ask him, what's the name of your banker at Credit Suisse?" Yes, and then he's struggling. "It's, yes, it's, Frank Muller." Oh, no, he actually said Frank Muller. And that happens to be the name of a famous Swiss watch shop. Here's a photograph of it from Google Maps. So I said to Mr. Big, I said, "Frank Muller, do you mean Frank Muller?" "Yes, Mr. Thompson." I said, "Isn't that the name of a famous watch shop in Geneva?" Silence. "Mr. Thompson, money will arrive later today." And he hung up. Anyway, that was the last I heard from him for more than a month. Well, let's say I never heard from him again, actually. But I knew the money wasn't going to come, and I knew it was all a hoax. And after a month or so, I plucked up the courage to call my friend Ronnie at the Chartered Accountants. I said, "Ronnie, I guess you realised at some point that this was all a big hoax and a big fraud. What's going on? I mean, why would he go to all the trouble of coming to Geneva to pretend to open an account when he's got no money anywhere?" And Ronnie said, "Oh my God, Clive, that was the worst experience I've ever had." He said, and he told me the full story. What had happened, Mr. Hotel is a client of the Chartered Accountants. They do the hotel audit, and Mr. Hotel is also personally a client of Ronnie's. for wealth planning in terms of tax planning. He was Mr. Hotel was what they called a UK resident non-domiciled person, which had at the time a special tax status. So he said, we do the planning for Mr. Hotel, and we heard from Mr. Hotel that Mr. Big was going to invest in his hotel company to do some improvements and maybe buy another hotel. So we invited him to bring Mr. Big in so we can give him some tax advice on structuring the deal so that everything's structured very nicely. And during the course of the conversation, we heard about the account that we thought existed in Credit Suisse. Mr. Big told us all about it. And that's when I called you, he said. But he said, we spent thousands and thousands of time hours, billable hours, on Mr. Big, only to realise when we were out with you at the same time as you realised that this is all make-believe. And I said, well, why? What's the motive? And he said, well, as it turns out, it's not clear whether Mr. Big is really the nephew of Mr. Hotel. But either way, what happened is that Mr. Big had arrived in London with no money and had stayed in the hotel of Mr. Hotel and somehow had started playing this game of I'll invest your hotel to try and continue to stay in the hotel without putting down a credit card or providing any money. And Mr. Hotel, believing everything to be true, either innocently or not, we don't know. Whether the nephew story was completely true, we don't know. But believing it to be true allowed him to stay in the hotel without paying any bedroom fees or rental fees, thinking that he was going to get an investment of tens or maybe even much, much more invested in tens of millions invested in his hotel. And so obviously even Mr. Hotel now knows it's was a fraud, and he's thrown Mr. Big out of the hotel. But he said everybody got taken. He lost his money by not being able to rent out the room to anybody else. We've incurred a lot of billable hours, thousands and thousands, he said, of billable hours, which I can't bill. He said it's very awkward and embarrassing in my firm. But that's what happened. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's the full story. If you like this kind of story, if you want to hear more about gold or more about the stock markets, I will be talking about them more frequently. I've got lots more stories to tell you. Please like and subscribe. And thanks very much, and thumbs up.